Hi there. After understanding the mutually exclusive projects with reference to their scale of production, now we will choose the projects when it comes to choosing different technologies. And we know that in economics, the most common case is choosing between capital intensive and labor intensive techniques of production. So a similar kind of analysis will be conducted here. We are assuming that there are two sorts of technologies that we have, and one is the manual technique and the other is mechanical technique. Definitely, this will be the capital intensive technique, and this will be the labor intensive technique. So, we have to choose between these two, and for that, we will base our analysis on the basis of the cost, and that will be specific to the cost only. So here we have an example of a project. We have basically two streams. One is for the manual technique, other is for the mechanical technique. And we have 5 years here and again 5 years here. We have wages, other costs, and then definitely the total costs. So this column is the sum of this column and this column. So we have the total cost column, the sum of which will be equal to this. In the same way, we have for mechanical technique, equipment costs and operation and maintenance costs, and their sum is also there. So you see, as per the manual technique, we have wages and other costs. And for mechanical technique, we have equipment cost and the operation cost. Accordingly, we have the components of the cost as per the technique. So both of them, we have the costs for them, and we have calculated the present value of this cost stream on the basis of 10% discount rate, 12% and 15% discount rate. Same is done for the mechanical technique, that is 10%, 12% and 15% of the discount rate. Now what we are going to do is to calculate the difference of the two techniques, because this is not going to compare them in a logical way, because one of them is having greater stream and one of them is having lower stream from the second year till the fifth year. But from the first year, the equipment cost, for example, is higher and the maintenance cost is also there. Here the wages are the bulkier part of the overall costs. Here a constant value is occurring, and here value which is changing, because in the beginning there is capital cost and then there is similarity. So you see, on the whole, a manual technique seems to be more expensive and capital intensive technique seems to be less expensive. Whereas when it comes to the discounted values, we have different results. So we have to choose some other technique in order to be able to compare them. So for that, what we are going to do, we are going to resort to the difference of the manual technique. And for that, the difference has been calculated. And the reason of taking the difference of the two streams is that we have observed that the values, they have a tendency to cut each other, because if you see that 10%, 12% and 15%, we have started the value from 181 and it is ending at 160. Here, however, we have 175 and it is ending at 161. So it started from a higher value and it is reaching a lower value. It is starting from a lower value and it is ending at a higher value. So there is a tendency of them to intersect each other. This is where the concept of taking the difference of the two streams and then finding the crossover discount rate can help us. So difference of the manual technique and mechanical technique, as I said earlier, we are going to take the difference of the two streams, and this is the difference of the two streams. Then this is the sum, which is a good calculation to have, but definitely we cannot find on the basis of it the results. Then we have 10%, 12 and 15% again. the same discount rates that I used individually for the manual and the mechanical technique. Now the difference of the two is going to allow me to observe that their present value has turned negative. It was positive initially, but then it turned negative. And that is the phenomenon that I could see here, that the value was 160 and 161, and they have a tendency to intersect each other. This is the discounting factor in which we have taken those 5 years, and this is the discount rate, which is 12% as per our convention, and then we have the opportunity cost of capital, which is again 12%. So this is the value with which we will compare the results. This is the crossover discount rate that we have calculated by using this differential stream, and we can do this easily by using the interpolation formula. And before that, we need to find out then NPV, which is positive, and the other NPV, which is negative. So it is 14.28, and you can already see that it should be hidden between 12 and 15%, and it is actually there, that is 14.280, and it is more towards 15% because it is 805, and at 12% it is 2756. So here 0 is closer. This is why it is closer to 15%, that is 14.28%. Now we have built a profile that will help us to observe that how this crossover discount rate is happening. What we have done is we have taken the difference of discount rate, that is 1%. So we are checking each successive value with the gap of 1%, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we have the mechanical and the manual technique difference that we already calculated, and on the basis of that we have found the values of present value. This is the present value profile, not the NPV profile, because we are not calculating the difference of the benefits and the costs. It is simply the value of the costs in its stream that we are discounting and finding the value of present value. So for the manual technique and for the mechanical technique, this difference is also calculated, and at 0% and 1% and 2% and 3%, you can guess that how all these values have been calculated simply by using the various discount rates. And when we reached 14%, it was NPV, it was positive, and then it turned negative at 15%, and these are the two values that we can use to interpolate and find out the crossover discount rate, because at 14% or till 14%, the NPV of the differential stream is positive, but then it turns negative. So the crossover discount rate is somewhere between 14 and 15% that we already observed in our calculations above, that it was 14.28%. Till that, we have preference for the mechanical technique, and afterwards we have preference for the manual technique. It is so because here you can see the values of the cost stream. They are lower for the mechanical technique, which is highlighted in the gray color. And when you compare these values with these values in orange color, they are for the manual technique. So clearly we can see that all these values, they are greater as compared to that of the mechanical technique. So mechanical technique seems to be cheaper as compared to the labor intensive technique. But afterwards this process reverse, because now the mechanical technique has become more expensive. Just to compare, this is 161 and this is 160. So now manual technique has become cheaper. Again, 156 and 158. The comparison shows that this is cheaper as compared to the manual technique, mechanical technique. So this is why after this certain point we choose the manual technique, which is more desirable as compared to the mechanical technique due to its lesser cost. Here the stream has become negative after this, and the difference is in the form where manual technique comes before the mechanical technique. So this is the value which is the additional cost undertaken on manual technique as compared to the mechanical technique. So we are looking at the additional cost of manual technique. It is positive here. It means that there is a positive additional cost on manual technique. So it is definitely more expensive as compared to mechanical. So we choose the mechanical technique till there. But when it turns negative, it means that the cost on the manual technique now is lesser than that of mechanical technique. Therefore, it is suitable to go for the manual technique. So all these three streams, they are highlighting the same fact that there has been a phenomenon of crossover, and for that we have these two values between which we can do the interpolation. So that interpolation will give us this value of the discount rate, and at that the present value of the cost will turn to 0 approximately, which is showing the intersection of these two streams, that is the present value of the manual technique and present value of the mechanical technique, and they will intersect at this point because both of them have the same value at this point, that is 14.28%, and this is the remarks on it. Now we have the undiscounted analysis, and that is there is no discount rate, and for that we saw that mechanical technique was cheaper. Going back to the main table, these were the undiscounted tables, and this is the overall view. So now you see the manual stream as well as the mechanical stream. So you can see that manual technique was more expensive and mechanical was less expensive when it comes to the comparison of their undiscounted values. These are the undiscounted values. Coming back to that comparison, so the undiscounted highlighted that mechanical technique was cheaper. When we choose a discount rate, it was 12%. We found the present value of the costs of the manual technique at discount rate 12%, and it was this much. The present value of costs of the mechanical technique at the discount rate 12%, and it was this much. So here the mechanical technique again seems to be desirable. And then we found the present value of the costs at 12% discount rate of the difference of the two streams, and here it was positive. So it meant that manual technique was taking more costs as compared to the mechanical technique. So again the interpretation is in favor of mechanical technique. And then we have crossover discount rate. We found it, and it was this much. The present value of the costs that was calculated for all of these three streams on the crossover discount rate, and they were equal for their individual streams, and it was equal to 0 approximately for the differential stream. If we make a diagram of it, it will look something like this. This is where you can see the intersection is taking place approximately, and that's where the crossover discount rate is, somewhere between 14 and 15. Before it, manual technique is more expensive, and mechanical technique was less expensive, but afterwards the mechanical technique became more expensive and manual became less expensive. This is the line that shows the stream of the differential stream, and here we are. It is intersecting the x-axis, that is, it is equal to 0 somewhere at 14.28%. So it is also verifying what we have calculated. So these are the findings, that the crossover discount rate of the additional cost stream of manual technique has a value of this. This value is greater than the opportunity cost of capital, that is 12%. So if it is greater than 12%, its interpretation will be done from the point of view of cost. Let us see. Since we are dealing with the cost, the crossover discount rate shows the additional cost on manual technique as compared to mechanical technique, because it was manual minus mechanical. So manual was appearing before the mechanical technique. The additional cost on manual technique in this case is greater than the opportunity cost, so we avoid the manual technique. So this is not showing the benefits, because it is not based on the net benefits, it is based on the costs. So its interpretation will be opposite to the other analysis that we have been doing before. For example, for the small scale and large scale projects, where we calculated the crossover discount rate on the basis of net benefits, that show that we are dealing with benefits on the whole. So here, if it is greater than the opportunity cost of capital, it shows an undesirable situation or something which is more costly. And since manual technique appears prior to the mechanical technique in the difference, so it is on the manual technique. So manual technique seems to be more expensive. We have to shift to the other, and that is the mechanical technique. So with this theoretical diagram, we can see that the same thing is happening. This was the data that we used, and these were the results on the basis of this depiction. This is where the crossover discount rate is happening somewhere between 14 and 15%. So now we can summarize all of the things. These are the various possibilities and interpretation of the cost streams. Basically, we can place the manual technique before the mechanical technique, or mechanical technique before the manual technique. We can see that manual technique has more expense as compared to the mechanical technique, so we place it like this, that is manual technique minus cost of the mechanical technique. So the difference of the cost can be calculated, and then we can find out the crossover discount rate, and that will be showing the additional cost of the manual technique as compared to the mechanical technique. It has to be compared with the opportunity cost of capital. Here we will compare the mechanical and manual, and mechanical will appear first, and again the difference will be calculated with the opportunity cost of capital. So here the additional cost is of the mechanical project as compared to the manual project, and that is being compared with the opportunity cost of capital. So if it is greater than the opportunity cost, it means mechanical is more expensive. We should go towards manual technique. Here, if it is greater than the opportunity cost of capital, then we should go towards the mechanical technique, because manual is more expensive. Now, if it is less than the opportunity cost of capital, it means that manual is now cheaper than the alternative that we have, that is the opportunity cost of capital. So we should go for the manual technique. Here we are showing the preference for manual technique. Here the mechanical technique is appearing first, and if it is less than the opportunity cost of capital, that is the crossover discount rate, then we can say that mechanical technique is cheaper as compared to the opportunity cost of capital. So mechanical technique should be preferred. So these are four possibilities of comparison between manual and mechanical techniques on the basis of their intercomparison, if either of them is greater than each other. So this was the summary table, this was the diagram, and this was the comparison. These were the remarks. This was the table that we made on the basis of these findings: NPV profile, present value of the cost profile, and these were various results of present values, and this was the present value of the cost profile. And then we had the basis of the crossover discount rate, which is the difference of the costs of the manual and mechanical. This was the mechanical technique, the difference stream, and this was the stream of mechanical technique, the stream of the manual technique. So this was the mutually exclusive project selection when it comes to the choice between two different technologies. Thank you.